there is a difference between complexity in a situation and confusion in a situation. So let's talk about that. Confusion is disorienting. It fractures your inner world. And I'm pretty sure that's why the Bible says God is not an author of confusion. It produces fear, pressure, urgency, anxiety, and often comes with distortion of the truth. It pushes you to react instead of respond. It's like having a bunch of mixed messages that you just cannot interpret. It clouds your peace, makes you distrustful, and also makes you lack trust in God and even your own intuition and discernment. Now, complexity is more informational, okay? It's not spiritually disorienting, nor is it chaotic. Life is naturally complex because humans are layered, relationships unfold over time, and wisdom is gained progressively. Complexity invites patience. It requires observation. It deepens your humility and slows you down without stealing your peace. Complexity often says, I don't have all of the information yet, but that's okay. So it doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable. It is an uncomfortable experience, but it's not a chaotic experience. Relationships are a great example of this because relationships introduce complexity by design. Mainly because you're discerning another person's character, their spiritual maturity, their communication patterns, and their consistency over time. And that doesn't mean something is wrong. It just means that you're learning. And confusion pushes you to decide prematurely, while complexity gives you permission to wait. And when fear enters relationship, complexity can easily turn into confusion. Because fear wants control, certainty, and speed. But God often confirms direction first and timing later. And this is why you can feel led, confirmed, peaceful, and still waiting. Because waiting is stewardship, not confusion. Not every unknown is confusion. Sometimes it's just complexity, and complexity requires patience, not panic. This is why it's important to understand that not every moment of discomfort is a warning. Sometimes it's just incomplete information. And if we're not aware of this, our natural instinct to rush to a conclusion is how speed can turn something that's just complex into straight up confusion. For example, when something doesn't land the way we expected, maybe we didn't get a response that we expected, our nervous system can jump in and try to fill in those gaps before our wisdom does. And that's when we're allowing our fear to fill in the gaps. And that is where premature judgments forms. Judgment of intentions, judgment of character, and just judgments of the entire situation. And not because we're malicious, but because we're just trying to protect ourselves. So confusion is not always something that happens to us. Sometimes we create it by moving too fast. When we don't pause to gather context, clarification, and patterns over time, we move ourselves out of discernment and into reaction. And that is when chaos enters, not because God led us there, but because fear took the lead. And this is biblical wisdom, because Proverbs chapter 14, verse 15 says, the simple believe anything, but the prudent give thoughts to their steps. Discomfort is not the same as danger, and silence is not the same as deception. And I know if you have a history of trauma and abuse, this one is a little bit hard to digest, but just take a deep breath, because this is where our deliverance comes. Remember, one moment is not the same as a pattern over time. Complexity is going to ask you to slow down and discern. Confusion pressures you to make that decision right now based off of what just happened. And as a disclaimer, this does not apply to any form of overt physical or covert abuse. That has to be checked at the door. We're not tolerating. This is not a way to coerce you into tolerating any form of abuse. Okay, I just had to put that in there. This is strictly about relational misunderstandings. And truthfully, if we sit with complexity long enough, the truth will begin to surface without you having to abandon yourself or God in the process. And no, this is not lowering your standards or tolerating what you do not deserve. This is discernment. This is discernment in practice. And truthfully, this is how you strengthen your discernment and your trust in God.